Hi, this is Dave Whipple, and you're watching Bushradical. There's some geese, that's cool. Today I want to talk to you guys about bear attacks. I really want to talk about the mentality, because there's really two kinds of mentality when it comes to bears in the woods. On one side, there are people who are just Pollyanna, Peter Pan, and they're like, oh, bears won't bother you, bears are completely harmless, bears are misunderstood, bears, etc., etc. And they'll go out in the bush and never, ever, ever think about safety when it comes to bears. And then there's the other side of the equation where someone will panic in the woods because they think every dark stump is a bear, they think every cracked stick is a bear, and they won't go anywhere without, being armed to the teeth for bear. And you really should be kind of right in the middle. And I'm going to tell you why. Bears probably aren't going to be a problem, but bears have been a problem before. My personal experience and experience in my sphere is what I want to share with you guys today. Let's start in 1997. I was in Sitka. My wife Brooke and I were in Sitka. Just across the range in British Columbia at Liard Hot Springs, a man and a woman were both killed on the boardwalk that goes out to the hot springs by a black bear. She was trying to save her son from this black bear attack, and another person got involved to try to help her, and they both died, the parent and the helper. Both of them died due to this black bear attack. We were just a couple hundred miles away from that when that happened. A couple years down the road, in 1999, Brooke and I spent the winter in False Pass, Alaska as caretakers, completely isolated from the world. Just before we got to False Pass, a fella named Per Johnson, he shot a grizzly bear in his house, in his computer room. He'd had a big crock of salmon berries he was making into wine, and it busted in through his computer room window. Got into his crock of wine stuff. And he got up in the middle of the night, and there was a grizzly bear in his house. And he put one round right through his head with a 12 gauge, killed it dead as a rock. I could never go visit Per without him showing me the stain in the carpet and telling the story again and again. But hey, it's a great story. Speaking of False Pass, in 1992, somewhere around King Cove, that's kind of out on that peninsula, Alaska Peninsula area, there was a little kid. His name, I think, was Anton Bear. And he was snatched right off the road by a grizzly bear while he was walking with his mother. Before they could get back to the bear with any kind of help, the bear had pretty much eaten the little boy. I didn't pass through that way till about 7 years later, but you'd swear it happened just the day before. People in that neck of the woods took bears dead serious. And you probably couldn't buy a bear with a $1,000 bill out there. They destroyed the bear population. That's a terrifying event to have to live through. So I'm not judging either side of that. Bears are bears and people are people, and the poor little kid, he lost his life, and his mother must have just been utterly traumatized in a way that you couldn't even imagine. In 2001, Johnny McCoy was a pastor at a church in North Pole, Alaska, just down the road from Fairbanks. Johnny McCoy got mauled. I went to his church in '98, and he baptized me. I knew this guy. He was out moose hunting, got tore to ribbons by a grizzly bear. He'd lost the bolt out of his rifle. When he got attacked, he didn't have a bolt. He found out too late that there was just a couple bad things that happened in a row, and Johnny was absolutely tore to ribbons. A bit farther down the line, I moved to Delta Junction and used to fish this lake called George Lake. The year after I left Delta Junction, about 9 months since I was on the water fishing that lake, a guy got attacked by a black bear and killed on that lake. You might have seen the documentary Grizzly Man, the story of Timothy Treadwell. Timothy Treadwell lived out on the Alaska Peninsula in his summers around Katmai, and where there's no end of bears. And he advocated for bears, and he made a huge deal out of bear poaching, which may or may not have existed out there. I don't know. He was a zealot. He was very passionate about his cause. But he was also completely Pollyanna. He looked at bears, he had them all named, Cupie and Fudgy and Fluffy, and you know what happened to him? He got killed and eaten by a bear. and the lady who was with him, who trusted his opinion, trusted his insight into this animal, she got eaten too. I was at my fishing camp in Minto Flats back in 2010. And I had a bear come into camp late at night. I got 2 little kids with me and my wife. A small black bear, probably 150 pounds. And I run him off. I had a shotgun. I didn't even fire around. I just yelled at him and chased him off into the brush. But we were on an island and he went the wrong way to get off the island. 6 o'clock the next morning, and he passed within a foot of the edge of the tent. I was in a big wall tent with a screen front, just reading a book, sitting by the fire. He knew I was awake. I had a fire going. He walked right around the corner of the tent. I could have reached out with a stick and poked him. And so I grabbed my shotgun and went out there and yelled at him a bit. He didn't seem to care one way or the other if I was there. I pulled the shotgun up and I put a round right over his back. He just jumped a little bit and he walked into the woods. We left that day because that's the day we'd planned to leave. But I have a feeling if we would have been there much longer, I would have had to kill that bear. He had no fear of human beings. He was very interested in everything we had going on, and I had 2 little kids with me. Oh, here's another one. My wife and I and our kids, we go to Valdez fishing quite often, and you can't go to Valdez without seeing bear. I've seen my collie chase a bear up a tree in the glacier campground there. A lot of bears aren't nearly as brave as your average dog. And that particular dog was a real wimp. But the bear didn't know that. One specific year, there was a big grizzly down there, and she had 4 cubs. We'd go out on Allison Point where all the salmon run, and you could hardly go out there without running into that bear. She was out there morning, noon, and night every day for that, all the time that we were there in that summer. And I seen her pinched up against the rocks by a bunch of tourists. I seen her lose a cub and go tearing across the road 2 different times looking for a lost cub. Extremely dangerous circumstances. And no one ever had a problem with that bear. That sow with those 4 cubs was a big tourist attraction all summer and something to look out for if you're fishing or walking the road. There's another example of a bear that in a very high stress situation, in a very busy fishing area, 4 little cubs, tourists with cameras. She could have been somebody's death, and she wasn't. Opinions can vary about bears. I can only tell you my experience and the places I've been and the people I've known and the attacks that I've been in extremely close proximity to. And I can tell you this, there are no 2 bears that act the same at all. You can't predict what a bear is going to do. Bears do what bears want to do. And if that means walking away from a fight, that's what they do. If it means tearing you to ribbons, that's what they do. Don't be scared to death that every little bump in the night is a bear that's going to kill you. You're not meant to live in fear of everything. But on the other hand, don't go around thinking a bear is just a misunderstood, sweet, innocent animal, because a bear is an apex predator. It's the top of the food chain, and it's very well aware of that. But the point of all of this is just, is I wanted to put that out there. I wanted to put out my experiences and some of the more major experiences that have happened to people I've known or happened to people that I was in very close orbit with in places that I've frequented before, and to put that all in one spot, to put forward one person's opinion anyways of the truth about bears. So when I talked about protection with a firearm in the woods, that might seem like a foreign concept to a lot of people, but in the circles I've spent time in, it's a necessity. It's a common sense step that you take when you're going to be out in the Tules. It would probably seem pretty overkill, pretty paranoid in some places of the country, but other places of the country, it's just common sense. And I especially wanted to draw that parallel between the person who thinks a bear is just a cuddly, wuddly, harmless woodland creature, and someone who thinks that a bear is a bloodthirsty, savage killer. Because the truth is right about in the middle. It's not this way and it's not that way. It's pretty much the middle. The truth is what the truth is. You can't predict what a bear is going to do. It's better to have a gun in a deep bush situation and not need it than to need it and to not have it. I hope everybody's enjoyed this video, and I hope it's been an enlightening look at the experiences of bear encounters and bear attacks. And I hope this brings a little light to the thought of what you might want to take with you if you're going into northern Canada or Alaska or northern Michigan or northern Minnesota, somewhere where you might run into a larger population of bears. Wyoming, Montana, those type of situations. If you like what I'm doing, please remember to subscribe. I would sure appreciate it if you did subscribe. I really enjoy talking back and forth with the people who've subbed, and the more the merrier. Thank you guys so much for watching Bush Radical. My name's Dave Whipple. Be radical, eh? See you soon.